Bertram at Town Center Chevrolet Oldsmobile. See us today, Town Center, just off the Portman Bridge in sunny Surrey.
Sears Days is on now with hundreds of savings and super buys throughout the store. Like Sears Best Electronic Microwave, save $100. Sears own Tradition dress shirts in 4 business-like colors, save $8. Sparkling pinwheel crystal stemware, now half price. Plus Easy Living interior latex flat or ceiling paint, also half price. During Sears Days, on now at Sears retail stores in Canada, where you get your money's worth and more.
Like my new suit? I was just saying to myself, Webster, you look good this morning. Well, there's a reason I look good this morning. 2 reasons I look good. One, this is my final live program of the winter season. That's one reason. And the second reason is I have one of the most charmingly loquacious, smart, crafty, clever politicians in this country live on the program. Even though he did muff the chance to become leader of the Liberal Party, whether or not he would have become Prime Minister of Canada for much longer is something else again. That man, of course, is the ineffably charming and normally straightforward foe of the Conservative Party. I'm sure he thinks that Mulroney is now the governor of the 51st state. That is the Honourable Jean Chretien, External Affairs Critic for the Liberal opposition in the House of Commons. And we shall have a quiet little friendly chat with Mr. Chretien and expose some of his state secrets of the days when he was in power immediately after the break. There are a number of fairly hard political issues in this time of crisis in Canada. The Liberals left the country in such a mess that it's almost impossible, is it not, Mr. Chretien, for Mulroney and his American friends to put the pieces together again?
You know, I think that you don't look like a guy who is in a mess. You know, a new suit, and you're taking a holiday for part of the year. You know, you're doing pretty well. So there's a lot of Canadians who do pretty well, too. And I think that the people, you know, when I came in Vancouver here, everybody says, those bloody Liberals never done anything for us and this and that. You know, always, one day I was having a discussion with, a bitching session with business community, and they were complaining. I said, I understand your problem, you guys. When I woke up this morning at the Bay Shore, opened the drapes there, I saw those yachts down there. I said, it must be expensive to put gasoline in those big machines. When I said I took my walk in downtown. When I came in Vancouver in 1967 the first time, the one big building in downtown Vancouver was the Vancouver Hotel. After 17 years of terrible Liberal administration, there is so many big buildings in downtown Vancouver, I could not find the bloody hotel anymore.
Well, now let me give you the facts of life. That's merely political pap you're telling me. Let me give you the facts of life. The facts of life in British Columbia today are that we have 225,000 unemployed, that our lumber industry and our logging industry is in a damnably depressed state because of world markets and other reasons, that this country is in danger of being divided because of the prosperity in the East in Ontario and the major depression in the West. Now, you must accept...
You have not visited my riding lately.
Shawinigan?
Yes, you know, we have more unemployment than here. I say that.
Ah, but you agree that...
Yeah, there is some...
My picture of the country is correct.
You know, there is... No, there is some big problem. Always had been problem. Always will be problem. And anybody who come to you, Webster, and tell you there will be no problem if I become the boss, don't believe him. You know, I remember a long time ago when Mitchell Sharp, my friend, was Minister of Finance. He had a deficit of $500 million. He had 4% inflation, 3% unemployment, and the Globe and Mail was asking for his resignation. So there is nothing new. It's always like that. There is always problem in public administration, and we have the occasion to come and in lively way defend or attack on the public scene with you.
But I'm talking about a serious national crisis of a new division in Canada between the recession-ridden West and the prosperous central Canada.
No,
and nobody does anything about that.
You know, but the problem, you just mentioned yourself that the problem is markets. You know, you have to sell your goods.
And taxation.
And taxation, I think that it's probably competitive with most of the areas of the world of taxation in Canada. There is more benefits than other areas, like in the United States. They pay a bit less of some taxes, but they don't have the Medicare. But on the totality of the economy, you know, it's probably competitive.
Let's be specific, though. Is Mulroney not correct when he indicates quite clearly that if he can get jobs out of working with Reagan's Star Wars, that would be good for jobs in this country? Would you go for jobs from Star Wars for Canadians?
No. And I will tell you why.
No.
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 No. You know, we're not selling can-do reactor to India and Pakistan because they might use our technology to make bombs and they don't want to sign the non-proliferation treaty on nuclear armaments. And because they don't sign, we're not selling to them. Last week, even Mulroney himself, governments, gave orders to the Avalon not to sell planes to Libya because, you know, because they might use it in a war. We lost jobs. We're losing jobs in Pakistan. We're losing jobs in India. We're losing jobs in Libya because we're not selling goods that will be used for wars. So why should we today, you know, move a step forward in this escalation of armament? If they have money for research and development, Jack, there is a lot of areas where they can spend their money, but not in escalation, you know, in the war, in the armament rate.
You don't want even money for research and development of Star Wars to be spent in Canada by Mulroney's friends?
You know, if they want to spend money, you know, not on wars, they spend money on peace, and I will agree.
Now, do you...
Don't you agree with me?
I don't have to give an opinion.
Why not?
Because I'm a reporter.
You're better paid than I. You should give us your opinion.
Don't you talk about better pay
Oh,
than me.
yes.
Or we shall talk about the incredible index pension you will get. You've done 22 years in the House of Commons. But you're how old now? How old?
I'm younger than you.
How old are you? Answer the question, witness.
51, kid.
Is that a true answer?
It's a draw. You know,
When you're
I speak only on one side of my mouth. I always say the truth. I don't speak on both sides.
Now, when you are 65, you will get an index pension of about 80,000 a year, which will go to 150.
You know, are you sure?
Damn close.
You think that I will stay that long in politics?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you're nice, but I thought that you were my friend and you wish me better than that.
The fact is, though, that you are a politician to the soles of your boots, correct?
I love it.
You love it. And you will stay.
I don't know.
Why did you lose the leadership?
Why? Because I did not have enough votes.
All the liberal establishment was totally against you.
Yes, they were.
All the paid officials.
Yes, they
800
were.
of the 17 delegates were paid or controlled officials.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Is that democracy?
Yes. They should. They have the right to vote for me. The problem is that my biggest problem, to be candid with you, is that Pierre was coming from Quebec and I was coming from Quebec, and there was a kind of understanding in the party that we had to alternate between a French and an English. My argument was, let's go for the best, but the tradition prevailed, and even in my own province. The great thing about my leadership that gave me so great satisfaction, I won BC, I won Alberta, I won Newfoundland, I won PI, and I lost Quebec. But and the reason why I lost Quebec is not because they didn't like me. They felt they wanted to be fair. We, the French, were very fair. They says, Trudeau had been there 15 or 16 years, so, you know, let's have an Anglo now. And
The fact was Mulroney did not win the election. Trudeau's legacy lost the election.
No, Mulroney.
You would agree
I
on
know,
that?
I think. You know, in democracy, we win and lose. And we have to let them the time to prove that they are no better. And they are doing that very fast. Yeah, don't you agree?
What do you think of Mulroney's performance with the States?
It was a good show. You know, he looked like the bodyguard of Reagan in Quebec City. Don't you think so?
What did you think of that incredible snub to Jean Sauvé? Wasn't that abominable?
It's, you know, when you have Jean Chretien, Colombie-Britannique, as we say in English, and, you know, come here and defend the monarchy, isn't that great? You know, it was a snub to the monarchy. And you're offended. I can see your tears in your eyes.
I'm not offended. I'm not a great royalist, as you well know. But I expect the head of state to be there to meet the President of the United States, not merely an elected politician.
I agree with you. You know, it's the system. What would have been the situation in England if the same thing had happened?
Well,
They respect the protocol. They do the correct thing in England, I guess.
and so do you.
Of course.
You're the great one for the correct thing.
Of king, all the time.
Listen, let's get down to Carney's performance, Mulroney's performance, and a few other choice subjects, and your famous kitchen conferences, because he's going to stagger us with a story about how the Constitution wasn't signed after the break. You had so many jobs, I don't know what to talk to you about, because you used to be Justice Minister.
Yeah.
You were Energy Minister.
Yes.
Were you ever Finance Minister?
Yes.
Finance Minister. Now you're External Affairs critic.
I was a Minister of External Affairs too, Trade and Commerce. Anyway, 8 different posts. I was in charge in Ottawa.
It seems to me that the NDP has taken over the role of the principal opposition in the House of Commons. Don't you feel a little bit
Not
down
at all.
in the mouth?
I'm telling you, I'm in the House, and it's really not true. We're there every day, you know, and we are on the top of the issues all the time. Watch it for the fun of it. Every day they come after us. We pick the right issues and so on. In some of their traditional areas, for example, we might take the question of Star Wars. It is our, you know, our activities that got the Tories into trouble over that, and I saw Mulroney backing away, you know. Mulroney is moving forward and he backs away. I call it the other day, you know, the Mulroney walk. It's like Michael Jackson. He goes forward like that, but he is, you know, it is the Mulroney walk.
That's very good indeed. But it was the NDP that invented the phrase, in the dark clock. That was a good phrase. Do you endorse that phrase?
You know, it's you know, I don't want to
Well, what
talk
do you
about,
think
I don't want to talk about Joe.
Why?
Oh, because I don't want, you know, I'm such a nice guy. I don't want to hit someone who is so down.
Yeah, but is he any good at his job?
You know, I wish for him that he will be good, but every second week he got into all sort of troubles. But I think that in the last one it's a serious problem. I guess that there is, you know that Joe, last spring, was given a job to prepare on these problems a paper, you know, for the party. This paper never saw the light of the day. And I have the feeling, when I see him in operation, that what he had recommended to the party has been completely set aside, and now he has to deliver on a policy that he does not agree with. Because, you know, he was seen as the perfect red Tory. And now, you know, he has become a great Reaganite, and I don't think that he is personally very, very comfortable with that.
So Joe's very unhappy about the fact that his boss, Mulroney, will sing for his American supper at any day of the week.
Any day of the week, you know, it's just awful. I think that this relation with the Americans worries me very, very much. Because, you know, if you let all the decisions made in Washington, eventually somebody will say, we have to be there. And we will say we need some senators in Washington, and the independence of Canada will disappear. It is what worries me. I think that, and the Americans won't respect us for that. You know, a good friend, what do you expect from a good friend is that he tells you the truth. And if you're not just around President Reagan and tapping his back and say, you know, you're right and this and that, you know, he won't respect you. He will respect you. A good friend should be someone who is able to tell his friends the truth.
Can you explain why Caspar Weinberger came up here and said on CTV, well, this new system will enable us to decide where to put the missiles there or here in Canada? Can you explain why Weinberger would be so undiplomatic?
It's not undiplomatic. He was telling the truth. The problem is it is a game they are playing. You know, they will let the Americans spend a lot of money on the Canadian soil. Do you think that if there is an emergency, that the American will not come and say, we're using, you know, the airport, Cold Lake, and the others that we will be building in the north? You know, Eric Nielsen keep telling us, just, you know, it's not air base we'll have there, military bases, but it will accommodate any type of plane. There will be hangars there for alert where, you know, in time of emergency, the pilots will stay in their plane for 24 hours a day, just to be able to take off in minutes. So they are moving the battleground from United States to Canada.
But would that not be the fact of life, whether or not you, Mulroney, or the Liberals are in power? In a real emergency, the Americans will surely do as they wish.
You know, if they invade Canada, of course.
No,
but they know that the problem is you are a sovereign nation or you're not. We had decided in you remember, because you're young enough to know that, when Diefenbaker signed, you know, for the Beaumark.
Right.
In 57. Come 62, he decided to withdraw from that, and we had to accept them anyway because Canada had signed on the dotted line. We got the Beaumark in 1963 in Canada. It took 21 years to see the last Beaumark to go back. And during all that period, we had nuclear armament of the Canadian soil that we didn't want that. So they are doing the same thing, preparing the ground for us to be forced to accept something that we don't want
to
accept.
get the record straight, we must remember that it was Mr. Pearson who brought the atomic warheads into the Boeings in Canada.
You're wrong, Webster. You're wrong. We had signed the dotted line.
We had signed it.
We had signed.
But,
what?
But Diefenbaker kept them out.
No.
He double-crossed them.
No. He double-crossed the Americans, and it's why Doug Harkness, who was his Minister of Defense, resigned. It's why George Eves resigned, because when in international field you sign a paper, you respect your word. You know, you respect your signature. I do respect my signature. So why the Canada cannot, after we signed, try to walk away?
But here we are now. We're testing cruise missiles over Canadian land on American planes, right? We're making the cruise electronic gear in Toronto. We are part of the American war machine, and if they decided to use it, they would do what they wished with us.
Yeah, but you know, you have to understand the policy. We, the NATO nation, had decided some years ago that the Russians were ahead of the Americans. So that was the two-track policy. They says, let's build back, deployed enough, test enough, so that the two group will be at par. That is the first track, you know, to go to a balance. And after that, it was the period of suffocation that they were to reduce. What is happening with Star Wars, they are changing it. And rather than try to be equal with the Russians, they try to go ahead of the Russians. And that's a new step forward in the armament race. And of course, the Russians are no crazy. They will try to match them. And we're moving up and up. While the policy agreed by NATO was when we were to be at a level, we were to reduce. And they are in Geneva this time, not for increasing, for reduction. And what President Reagan is trying to do is trying to move ahead of the Russians at this time. And it's contrary to what we had agreed. And it's why it was not easy for us, but we had accepted, you know, to test the cruise in order to achieve the balance.
The parity.
Parity.
Fair enough. Enough foreign policies. It's dull. And
Is it?
Nothing we can do about it anyway. It's all in the hands of the Americans.
Not yet. You know, if you have a government who has backbone, we can play a role there. But we don't have such a government today. Trudeau had some guts.
Oh, yeah, he would never have submitted to that performance on the stage at Quebec City, would he?
Never.
Wasn't that awful?
I guess it was awful.
And it was your Liberal-appointed chairman of Canada Council who picked up the red phone and made jokes about the red phone. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
It was terrible, wasn't it?
I didn't find it that funny.
More with John Chretien. Calls in a couple of minutes. I want to get him to tell us some stories about the good old kitchen convention which saw the charters signed after the break. Just a couple of ones. You see, separation of Quebec is no longer any thought or consideration at all in this country, and we can regard the country as, except for the economic disparities, as totally culturally unified. Is that correct?
I think that we've come a long way. It's over that problem now, and we spend a lot of time. You know, 5 years ago, we were very worried that the country could split, and, you know, we won the referendum, we have a new constitution, a charter of rights. I think that it will be seen as a very important period. But because we've done it, you know, it's always like that. Churchill was kicked out right after the war. So here we have kept the country together, and the prize we got was 40 seats. And, you know, it's a bit disappointing in politics because people tend to turn the page after a period of crisis and forget about the past and look forward. And we paid that price.
That's right. Trudeau had to go. You had to serve your punishment in the wilderness.
Well, you know, you use the word punishment because, and you agree that we've done some good things.
I couldn't think of anything offhand that you've done.
But you just rose the problem yourself a minute ago. There is no talks of separation anymore. When Levesque says that, you know, I have to change and not be a separatist anymore because there is a wall there.
He's lost
you know,
the
who
battle.
built the war? It's Trudeau and I and the Liberal Party.
Perhaps we can only afford to talk separation in good times when there's lots of money and revenue about.
No, I think that there's more than money in life.
Yes, I understand
And there
that.
is values to be Canadians from sea to sea.
Now, have you considered writing a book at all?
I perhaps, I don't know. You know, I think that when I found the fall a bit dull, and I dictated a lot of souvenirs. And some people would like me to make it a book. I don't know if I should. But if it were to be a book, it will not be that, you know, a dull book. I would like to have it very lively,
For
that you could read it.
Oh, I'm sure that your book would be lively. For students of the Constitutional, let's go into that famous night in the kitchen when you and Romano were allegedly running, and them too, and all kinds of people were running around like cut cats, to use a funny English expression. You know what cut cat is?
I have an idea.
Okay.
But I don't meet them often.
Cut cats. Is it correct that, in fact, Manitoba never did sign the agreement that night? And that there were 2 provinces on the outside and not just one?
It's one of a fact that had been completely overlooked. The day of the 5th of November 1980, when we had the 81, when we had the Accord, all the provinces had signed. And what happened is the day before I met Romano and McMurtry, and I said, if you can sell that to the provinces, I guarantee I can sell that to Trudeau. And we split. And they did their work and I did my work. By 11 o'clock that night, Gardy Gardam from BC called me, wanted to know if I was serious. And I had spent some hours with Trudeau, who had said to me, if you have the majority of the province representing the majority of the population, I will buy it. So Gardy told me around midnight that he says, you have it, John, because we are in Manitoba, Saskatchewan is in Ontario and the 4 maritime provinces. And so I didn't sleep a minute. Because I was a bit nervous that we had a new constitution, but it was not confirmed. My counterpart was Romano. And when I reached Romano around 5 o'clock in the morning, he confirmed that there was 7. He said, Alberta, Lougheed will get up at 7 o'clock and we expect him to say yes. So I said, gee, we're doing too well. I don't want Quebec to be alone. You know, and because I knew that, and what was amazing yesterday at the university, one of the person from BC said, the first day of the conference, or the second day of the conference, Quebec had told them that they will never sign anything. So they more or less decided to put them aside. They wanted a deal, but Quebec, the goal they had was not to have a deal. So that morning, when Alberta joined, there was only Manitoba and Quebec who had not signed. So I said it would be politically better if Manitoba don't sign, and in fact Manitoba did not sign because Lyon had said, I will never sign a Charter of Rights. And he just, Mercier was his Attorney General, signed on his behalf, subject to approbation. So it was not a real signature, but that was lost into the shuffle because 3 days later, the NDP won the election and they did sign.
Yet we in the press seized on the fact that Quebec alone had not signed, when in fact 2 provinces had not signed.
Manitoba and Quebec had not signed.
You got to do a constitutional memoir, if nothing else, to put the record straight, Mr. Chretien.
I will.
Okay, Pat Carney, one of our favourite West Coast MPs.
Yeah.
She is successfully destroying your national energy program for the benefit of the economy of this country. A good move, we think.
You know, but you have to look at the reality. Who is changing the policy? It's not Pat Carney, it's the international price. Now, she says she's deregulating the price of oil, and I agree with her, there's no problem there. Because we had a price, the international price was there, and the Canadian price, and we were moving gradually. But because of the decline of the international price, the 2 prices are in parallel now. The only thing with deregulation, some of the younger Canadian companies will receive less revenue, and the big multinational will receive more revenue, because there was what they call the old oil and the new oil. The new oil, most of it belongs to Canadian
companies.
No, small company. Canadian companies. The old oil belong to Imperial Oil and Gulf and so on. So these will have more money and the Canadian company will have less. But the 2 price, you know, when you cut them off, neutralize each other. And she says that she will cut the PGRT by $500 million, and it will be more money for the oil industry, and they will probably collect it somewhere from your pocket, Jack.
Yeah.
Because...
but at least with the Tories in power, I must keep a straight face on this.
Yeah.
At least with the Tories in power, We have lost the stench of patronage with which you covered the country. Now, you'll agree that the Liberals were the greatest payola boys, patronage givers in the history of Canada. Every good Liberal had a job by the end of your regime. And we needed someone to clean out the stench of patronage.
You know, I think that we named some good Liberals, but we named people who were not Liberal. The Governor General was Schreier before Jean Sauvé. He was not a Liberal. You know, your friend Tom Berger had been named by the Liberal judge, and he was not a Liberal, and I can go on and on all over the place. A lot of people. When I was Minister of Justice, I named a lot of people who were not Liberals. I named a lot of Liberals too, and I never hide that fact. But what I did not understand is the hypocrisy of Mulroney, who said it's scandalous. It's scandalous. Now he has named two people who are not Liberals. One is the Speaker of the House, you know, Lord Francis. Every speaker, after a defeat, got a job by any government since Confederation. You know, there is a tradition that the former speaker become a senator. And he named Stephen Lewis. He is an NDP. But he never told you that it was not the nomination of Brian Mulroney. It was the thanks to Lewis by Bill Davis. Because when Bill Davis was in minority, Stephen Lewis kept him in power.
Oh, so it was Bill Davis who leaned on Mulroney to get the job for Stephen Lewis?
So much so that it is Bill Davis who called Lewis to tell him that he got him the job at the UN.
Great
They
gossip.
were paying a political debt that day.
But you see, what I'm getting at, and you were the progenitors, you invented patronage, the Liberals.
The Brits have done it.
Oh, but that was a class thing.
Oh, yeah.
But is it not
there
a
was
fact?
no room for the Scots like you.
Is it not a fact, Monsieur Chretien, that we cynical Canadians, ordinary taxpayers, sit on the sidelines and we know, oh, the Liberals have lost. The Tories are in. Fire every Air Canada director. Pack the spare seats in the House of Commons with all the old hacks, flacks, and bagmen. Give $30 million advertising contract to Dalton Camp, that magnificently neutral commentator.
Oh, yeah.
But are we as Canadians not entitled to be damn disgusted with this automatic switch of the stench of patronage from one team to another?
You know, I have to tell you that when we were there, for example, I was in 1980, when I took over the question of the Constitution, the High Commissioner in England was Jane Wadds, the former president of the Tories, and we kept her there for the term of her job, and she was in a very difficult position because it was at the time that we were trying to patriate the Constitution. We did not remove her. We kept her. I worked with her until her term expired. But let me tell you something.
Mr. Chretien, you're doing a Trudeau.
No.
I asked you a question and you answered a totally different
But
point.
ask me, perhaps I forgot the question. What was the question?
Are we ordinary taxpayer Canadians entitled to stand by knowing that on a change of government, all the old guard will be thrown out and all the new people will be thrown in?
But I replied to your question.
No,
I
you
said, no, we never remove anybody until the end of their terms. And they have done it. We let them expire their term and replace them. But patronage, you know, you have to work. For example, there was some big deal because he has named Mr. Trudeau, and Mr. Trudeau had named, some former MPs.
Oh, yes,
jobs.
yes.
You remember?
Yes.
But this made me mad because, suppose that tomorrow, I were to take a job from the government, everyone will say that it's patronage. And if it's patronage, because I've served my country 22 years next week, and I'm fed up with moving around, but I say, I offer my service to the government to use my experience for the good of the people. That will be patronage. If I go out in the private sector as a lawyer, paid big fees to suck it to the government, in order to organize the scheme for you and other people who makes money not to pay all your taxes, the people will say that, oh, he is on the side of the private sector. He's a great guy. Will make more money and hurting the nation. If I offer my service to the nation, it will be patronage.
No.
I learned a lot of few things in politics.
You know there are degrees, but what offends people with my Presbyterian-type conscience, which is maybe a harder conscience than your conscience, my Presbyterian conscience, is when I see people who've been involved in civil disobedience going to the Senate, when I see somebody's wife getting a 40-year appointment to the Immigration Appeal Board, when I see liberal hacks put on Air Canada from Vancouver and then they're thrown out and a bunch of similarly ill-distinguished Tory hacks get put in. That's not good.
You know, I think that you name people when there is openings and you try to find the best people possible. And if people...
Providing they're a party member and faithful.
No, I'm telling you
and
that, of course, if between two equals, you tend to take your friends.
You've convinced me. I now no longer object to patronage. It is
you want a job. You want a job.
It is a proper Canadian way of life. Your questions to Jean Chretien after the break. Oh, the troubles that we are going to see in this country because of the implications of the Constitution. Oh, the bonanza for the legal profession. Oh, the handicaps for industry. Mr. Chretien, do you really think we needed the Aboriginal rights in the title? You know the problems we're going to have in the courts for the next 10 years in British Columbia over Mears Island.
You know, the Aboriginal rights were not created by us. It is the King of England in 1763 in the Royal Proclamation who said to any British settler, when you move anywhere, you settle with a native first. And here in British Columbia, it was not done. It is a dictum of the monarch from England in 3 centuries ago or 2 centuries ago.
Which you have now enshrined in the Constitution.
Of course, you know, it is because they are the first citizen of this land and they had these rights, you know, given to them.
Is there a simple answer which could obviate, not talking about Mears Island, the court battles which can go on for 100 years?
I think that, you know, they should try to avoid, on both sides, court battles and make some reasonable settlement.
Negotiate now.
Negotiate now.
Go ahead to Jean Chretien.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
My question has to do with the Mirabel Airport affair, which has been in the news again recently.
Good question.
With the seizure of all the farmland, and recently Rock LaSalle has made an agreement with the farmers giving them their land back. I'm just wondering why, in this big pink elephant of Mirabel, that they had to take over so much farmland in the first place, far more than that was necessary.
Oh, just a minute.
It was, you know, you agree it was too much,
Chretien,
you know.
comment on that, please.
The problem at that time, there was a lot of preoccupation about noise pollution by planes, and the people thought it was to increase, and in fact it has decreased. And because of these requirement of land, the planners said we need a lot of land, and they forced us to expropriate more than we needed. It was a mistake.
I thought it was a job creation project.
No, you don't create any jobs when you buy land.
But you put on God knows how much you spent on that unused white elephant.
You know, there was plans for a second airport in Toronto and in Montreal and so on at that time, and there was, because of the increase in the price of oil and the reductions in the air traffic, it was not needed.
Pickering was as big a mess as Mirabel.
Yeah,
in the land.
Pickering was a mess there, but because of the difficulty, they decided not to build, and they don't need to airport either in Montreal or Toronto.
Go ahead, please, to Jean Chretien.
Mr. Chretien,
Yes.
if your so-called concern for the nuclear non-proliferation treaty as it applies to Canada's participation in SDI exploration is really genuine, then how come it didn't stop you from selling a CANDU reactor to a very volatile Argentina at its time?
Because they signed the treaty, sir. It is a question of, you know, you cannot decide to sell to what you term volatile countries. In international laws, all the countries are the same. If they sign international treaty, they qualified for us to sell them CANDU reactor. We didn't, and as the guidelines became more and more stringent, it's why we stopped selling to Pakistan and we stopped selling to India. But in terms of Argentina, they've signed the international treaty. It's not for us to pass a judgment that this is someone who will keep his word and the other. We presume that they will.
How come you're always so very quick to yell out foul whenever the U.S. builds up its armaments, but I never hear a squawk out of you when the USSR builds up its armaments? It doesn't seem to be any equilibrium there.
He says this of all liberals, I'm sure. You know, you never attack the USSR.
We don't attack the USSR. We say that, you know, they are crazy to be in that race. We don't, you know, we condemn their interventions in Latin America. We attack them as, it's not a question of attack. It is a question of policy. We say that there should be no outside power intervening in Central America. That's applied to the Americans and to the Russians and to the Cubans. You know, it's an even-handed policy. We think that we should let this country decide for themselves what they want without outside interventions.
What's the truth behind the court's resignation?
The
Court's resignation.
Oh, I don't know, you know. I think that I thought that the standards were very high. Just a little appearance in a bar, he had to resign. I think that what McKay has done was worse. But McKay did not resign. You know,
oh, I'd forgotten all about that. When you say what McKay had done was worse, you're referring to the fact that a certain provincial premier by the name of Dickie Hatfield, Disco Dickie,
yes,
was able to have a private meeting in the Chateau Laurier with McKay and his lawyer there over the question of the charge of marijuana.
Yeah. I think that, you know, it was improper for the Solicitor General, in my judgment, to receive one person under investigation and discuss. He claimed that it was done over the table. Like, why he did not receive him in his office? Why he had to go into a room? Why he needed a lawyer? Why the lawyer was not one of his department, but a personal advisor? You know, I think that that was worse than what Coates did.
Is that affair now over and done with and forgotten? And will
I don't
Mr.
know.
Hatfield,
I don't
will he
know.
be rehabilitated in the incredibly loyal burghers of New Brunswick?
I don't know. You know, provincial politics and...
But it's no longer an issue in the House of Commons.
It might be because when the report from the RCMP will be coming out, that might be revived. I think that our friend John Nunziata did a fantastic job on
He
it.
certainly did. Nice to see a real troublemaker in the House.
He is
isn't
a
it?
real one.
Lots of guts.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm glad we're on the topic I wanted to talk about now. Mr. Chretien, there's no justification whatsoever for arresting anyone for possession of marijuana in the first place. 500,000 Canadians have criminal records for possessing marijuana since the Liberals first said they'd get rid of the laws. You heard what the Ledane Commission said.
Yeah, but the law is the law, sir.
I beg your pardon?
The law is the law. The Parliament has never voted that to decriminalize marijuana.
I know, but you should.
Yeah, but you know, whenever the law is passed, you know, I not necessarily disagree with you, but the law is there, and every citizen has to follow the law. You don't respect the law that you like and not respect the law that you don't like. The law is the law.
That's
and
what
as
I'm
long
doing.
as
I'm
it's in the
showing
book,
respect for the law. I want you to change it.
fine, that's another proposition. You know, if the law is changed, nobody will be charged for possession. I agree with you that simple possession, you know, it was one of the propositions I made, should not be a criminal, with a criminal record at offense. But we've never been able, because of the controversy, to move forward on that, because there is a lot of people who are afraid that if you open up on marijuana, you know, that will lead to harder drugs eventually. So you have your views. I think that simple possession should not be a crime, but it is under the law of today, and it should be changed. But as long as it's not changed, everybody has to follow the law, premiers or no premiers.
Okay, one question on that, and these people from Normal, the pot-smoking organization, always manage to get in on the phone. Are you, Jean Chretien, in favor as a Liberal politician of decriminalizing all use of marijuana in Canada?
I think that it should be an offense to have simple possession, but it should not lead to a criminal record. But I think that we should keep it as a crime for those who are the trafficker of marijuana.
Go ahead, please. Is that the official Liberal Party position? No, it can't be.
It's my position.
Your
you know.
position?
Yes, I have not checked the book on that. It's not my field.
At least
my problem is I speak up my mind all the time.
Well, it's not a big handicap.
No.
No.
I'm enjoying it.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I shall be back after the break. Jean Chretien, External Affairs Critic for the Liberal Party, member from Shawinigan.
Saint-Maurice.
Saint-Maurice. Is it Saint-Maurice, Shawinigan, or Saint-Maurice?
That's the Saint-Maurice River. That's the name of the riding. My hometown is Shawinigan, as you know well.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Chretien, South Africa appears to be on the brink of civil war.
In the old days, we used to be able to distinguish between American policy and Canadian policy in South Africa, and Canada used to play a very constructive role, so it seemed, but now it seems to have disappeared. What are you doing to bring about more public awareness about South Africa, or about proposing a different policy for dealing with South Africa, perhaps to promote peace and a sort of orderly transition instead of civil war?
You know, we always, as a party, had a strong view on the apartheid policies of that government, and we condemned and took action. You're asking me why it's not more on the public agenda at this time. You know, you have a good point. I think that we have been perhaps too much involved in other more urgent problems for Canada, like the North warning system and the Star Wars. And that is an area that worries us. I think that this problem has to be resolved because there is a lot of violence going on there. But, you know, it's a problem internal to South Africa. We can express our view as it should be solved, but within that nation, it's going to be the South African who will resolve it.
Do we have any trading bars to South Africa? Do we prevent certain things being traded?
Yes, well, I don't know exactly in which area, but we don't do much business anymore. We used to be. There is still some Canadian investment in South Africa, but the trade relation between Canada and South Africa has gone down.
Go ahead from Mission, BC.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning to Mr. Chretien. Welcome back to British Columbia once again.
Thank you, madam.
And maybe Jack won't remember some of the good things you did, but as a taxpayer in British Columbia, I'm most grateful, sir, to the government and to you as Minister of Energy for allowing homeowners and taxpayers such as myself to insulate their homes for the older homes and also for the changes of their furnace. Through your grant, I'm most grateful to you, and it's too bad this is not continued.
I think that it was a good move because when you're saving energy, you're saving it forever. I think that in helping the people in isolating their houses and moving from, say, high-price oil to natural gas, there was a lot of savings on the long run. But of course, the Tories have killed that program, so you cannot do that anymore with the government help. But I think that it was a good program.
Go ahead from Nanaimo.
Hello, Mr. Chretien.
Yes, go ahead.
When are you coming to Nanaimo, and when are they going to start to rebuild the party in BC?
Oh, we're doing our best there. It's a tough job, though, because, you know, at this moment, we're only 40 in the House of Commons. I think that we have, as I say, to let the honeymoon of the Tories to pass. As I say, you know, we will have to move in when the dishes will be flying in their kitchen. And it will come soon. You can see the division between Joe Clark and Nielsen and so on. It's a constant frustration for us. We're always trying to get strong in BC. We have the leader from BC now, and we're trying to build from there. You're telling me that I'm welcome in IMO. I'd like to be there. There's a lot of people invite me, but I have my riding to go to care too. So I come regularly here. I hope someday I'll stop in that beautiful city.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Chretien.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. There seems to be a rise in racist incidents in this country. We've had a synagogue firebombed in Vancouver, and a town councilor in Vancouver Island says that interracial couples shouldn't be allowed to vote, and we've had the Christie and Zundel show. But what we haven't had is our federal leaders and leaders of the opposition speaking out very strongly against racist thinking, and these people are encouraged by the silence. So could you comment on that?
I think that perhaps we're at fault not speaking because we don't see many incidents in Canada happily. I think that Canadian society is a very tolerant society, but we have to be guarded against a new incident like that. We just gave the Canadian a Charter of Rights that guarantee the non-discrimination, the freedom of conscience, the freedom of religion. It has to apply. You know, one of the problem is it's a difficult balance. When you talk too much about it, sometimes you just help it, to give ideas to others. There is a big controversy about some of the trials going on at this time. Is not inciting people to think more about it.
Just let's talk about the Charter for a moment and the freedom of rights and freedom of speech. Will we now have, under the new Charter, as broad and unrestricted freedom of speech as the Americans have under their Constitution?
Yes, sir.
So therefore, I can go on the air if I wanted to and argue for instance, Nazi policies.
You know, there is a limit to freedom in the society.
You can't shout fire in a crowded theatre.
Okay, so that is the guide used by the court. So 8 literatures is banned in a society. Should we or should we not ban it? But it is there. It is in the book. I think that we should not permit too easily for the people to create hate in the society. But on the other hand, you have to balance it off against the freedom of speech. And it's always a very delicate balance.
You were never able to make up your mind on what pornography is or isn't. I know that. But surely the big mistake in the Zundel trial about the Holocaust being a so-called hoax was the fact that anybody ever laid a charge against him and gave him this podium from which to spout his foul propaganda.
Yes, that is one of the problems, you know, that leads when you speak too much about incidents like that. Sometimes you gave the hint to a nut somewhere to repeat the same thing, and sometimes it's better to let them. But when there is violence, like burning a church or bombing and so on, we have to speak loud and clear against any type of activities like that.
Again on the Charter, will mandatory retirement at 65 will that be wiped out now by an interpretation of the Charter? Who can force anybody to retire? It's my freedom to work, surely to God.
I put it in the Constitution, Jack, so you can carry on even of your age.
Do you think that's right, though?
You should carry on, yes. If you're good, why not stop? My dad was 93, you know, and when he died, and he was still putting money aside for his old days. Because, you know, he was...
I know.
He was trying to... I don't think that mandatory retirement, you know, should not be there. If someone wants to keep working, he should. But we should have...
What about the young people? How are they ever going to get promoted if all these old 65-year-old jossers are going to stick in their jobs? And what about the guy who wants to retire at 65 and his wife says, you don't have to retire. Keep working, keep working, keep working, keep working.
Why you're working and you're no more 50?
Well, I'm the same age as you, 51.
Yes.
You know that perfectly well.
Because when you still have some talent, you should still working. In some areas it's easy, in other areas it's more complicated.
I mean, a job like yours and mine, there's no real physical labor involved. It's merely sitting down and moving your lips.
And using your brain.
Well, moving
it's not a big need for you.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Yes.
Morning, Monsieur Chretien.
Good morning.
It is my opinion that the Liberal candidates did the party and the country a large disservice by not electing you leader. My question to you is, when Mr. Turner resigns, will you run again and allow this country to profit from your services?
You know, we the Liberals, we don't change leaders very often, you know, every 15 years. So I don't know when it will open. But in 15 years from now, I will still be younger than Jack. So I don't know. I know it's purely a hypothetical question. I'm still in politics, and my leader is Turner. I'm working for him, and I'm happy. And we'll see what happens.
Let's do another segment, eh?
Oh, yeah.
I want an easy program this morning. It's my last live show this season.
And
if you do the talking, I don't have to work.
Of course. Let's go
after the break. Jean Chretien, taking it easy now in the opposition in the House of Commons, the cares and burden of office have virtually been lifted from your shoulders.
Completely, for the time being.
You just sit there and nag.
Yes.
How many days a week?
You know, it's easy now. You know, I'm always right and I don't have to prove it. Before I had to prove it. That's easier now.
How many days a week do you put in? 3?
I am in Ottawa at least 4 days a week. On the Fridays, if there is not much going in the house, I go and work as a lawyer. Because I had a big drop in my salary going from minister to member. And I have to provide for my family.
Is your law firm in Toronto or Montreal?
I have a law firm in Toronto and one in Shawinigan.
Your little storefront office in Shawinigan?
I still have it there.
You do real estate transactions and everything?
No, I just give big advice.
You're the Abe Lincoln of Shawinigan, is that correct?
Almost.
Go ahead, please.
Abe Lincoln of Shawinigan, indeed.
Looks not unlike him.
I've just been holding on the line here for about 60 minutes, but as most good things in life are worthwhile waiting for. It's a pleasure to listen to you talk, Mr. Chretien. I believe there are enough voters in this country who believe that after Mr. Turner has his turn in office, before you retire, you'll get your turn. It'd be a nice change to see truly a man of the people.
Thank you.
Mr. Webster.
Yes.
A little comment for you. It seemed at the beginning of the beginning of the program you were criticizing the past Liberal government for some of the unemployment.
Yeah.
I've just read through a budget for renewal, BC and Partners in Enterprise. Boy, what a laugh.
Yeah, that Bennett's budget was an absolute disaster, as you well know. And in fact, the Bennett government this past 9 months has been an absolute disaster. You know what he did?
That is one thing that the people should look at the time. Now there is a change of government in Ottawa since 8 months. You used to blame the Liberals, you know, but there was a provincial government here, and you don't seem to blame them as much as they deserve.
We now have a Commissioner of Critical Industries, and I want to take a minute just to pat myself on the back. Two of the most efficient lumber operations in British Columbia, Sook Forest Products and Lamford Cedar, they were into the banks for a lot of money. But when they took over as a receiver, you know, they milked it, the banks milked it, and then prepared to close it down. You know how dreadful these banks are, don't you?
They are quite tough, yes.
Yeah, dreadful. Anyway, listening to this program, the government took notice of the fact. And yesterday, the Minister of Finance, Hugh Curtis, God bless you, Hugh, sought and received assurances from the bank involved that even though they are now in official possession for liquidation, they are not going to dispose of the assets until the new social credit, listen to this, Commissioner of Critical Industries looks at the situation. So I hope he wins. Now,
well done, Jack. Well done.
Where did Social Credit get the Commissioner of Critical Industries? From page 333 of Lee Iacocca's book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So maybe you as a Liberal should read the book and steal some ideas. I'm talking too much. Go ahead to Jean Chretien.
Okay, I've just called to join the Chretien fan club. I never voted Liberal, and I never really got excited about federal elections, but when Mr. Chretien was running for the leadership, I ran around telling everybody I saw, I'm going to vote for Mr. Chretien. And I think it would have been a surprise in BC if Mr. Chretien had been the leader of the Liberal Party.
Yeah, but we cannot rewrite history, and one of the things that gave me great pleasure is I won the delegates in BC, so I'm happy that I have a few friends.
Good base for the future, perhaps. Go ahead, please.
Yes.
That's you, ma'am.
Yes, I'm bonjour, Monsieur Chretien.
Bonjour, madame.
Bonjour,
Speak in
Mr.
French
Webster.
to Jack. He's good in
En
French.
français, si vous voulez.
No, that's all right. I'll speak in English. I would first like to state something and then perhaps lead Monsieur Chretien to answer something that's obviously on the mind of British Columbians. First of all, I would like to applaud what Mr. Chretien said, that the Liberals have taken a stand or have taken a position like Mr. Churchill after the war, because we indeed have and we will be back. And the country will see that we have the right vision of Canada. But my main issue today is going back to something Mr. Webster said early on in the program about the economic disparity between the East and the West in Canada. And I would like Mr. Chretien to say really how much of that is due to Liberal federal policy and how much of that is
I
due
think
to
that it was it was not a fair statement by Jack. You know, the standard of living from Eastern Canada, you have to divide in Eastern Canada. You might talk about the Toronto area, that's one thing, but the rest of Eastern Canada is a hell of a difference. I think that standard of living in the Maritimes and standard of living in most part of Quebec is much lower than anywhere in the West, and that is a fair assessment. Of course, everybody would like to have more, and the West would like to have more, and it's what drives our system. People always want more. And there is a lot of influx of people who have come to the West Coast because, you know, there's more prospect. You know, when you look at Canada, you know that the West Coast will become more important because we live on the Pacific from the West Coast. And it is in the Pacific where there is the people now, the technology, and the money. And I think that Mulroney is ill-advised to put all his eggs with the Americans. I think that when I was in Japan not long ago, you know, they were worried about it because the Japanese look for diversified sourcing of raw materials and so on. They buy from Canada coal and woods and this and that, and from United States and Australia. But if we look like we're the 51 states of America, you know, they will not feel that they have a different sourcing than America. So it's why we have to keep our economic independence, you know, in order to be attractive on the Pacific. And in the next 50 years, you know, it's going to be the Pacific who will be dominating. The Atlantic is over.
Okay, now say after me. You have a lovely accent, but say after me. Not Pacific, say Pacific. Pacific.
You know, Jack.
Pacific.
You're not a very good professor.
Professor.
I love to put the accent on the wrong syllable, you know.
After the break. Now, if he was running for office, you know, we're in the middle of a campaign, you wouldn't have the same jolly old Webster chatting him up like this, but he's a remarkably humorous fellow, Mr. Chretien, when he's not in power. I mean, he's no threat to us
we
today.
had fun when I was a minister. You remember, we had great programs.
Many great programs. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chretien, there is the impression throughout Canada that the Liberal government was responsible in driving out a lot of exploration and drilling to the south. Last Monday's Wall Street Journal had this to say. It says, just 3 years after energy lending turned into the biggest banking bust since the Great Depression, a second wave of financial problems is rocking big Texas energy lenders, pretending more serious losses at even the strongest banks. Moreover, the prospect of still weaker petroleum prices could soon cause a third wave of banking and that's the quote I make. This suggests to me that the Liberals had the right energy program for the times, and in fact suggests that Canadian banks were spared the serious problems now faced by Texas banks.
Okay. I agree entirely with you. You know, there was an emotional debate about it, and people did not look at the facts. At that time, it was, as you say, the policy for that day when the price were always increasing. Now the international price is going down. But you're right, in Canada we managed to get out of these new difficulties with very little difficulties. We had to bail out only one company, Dome, and and of course lately there was a bailout of a bank in Alberta.
Canadian Commercial Bank.
Yeah, but compared to the disasters that they had because of bad investment by the banking community in the United States, we've done very well in Canada. Thank you for the compliment.
Thank you.
We need some these days.
And you did a good bailout of Petrofina at a fancy price too, didn't you?
You know, but there was a report asked for by the Tories who said that we paid the normal price. Every takeover at that time was going on with a premium. Bill Davis paid a premium to take over his own oil company in Ontario.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, sir, my friend.
Furthermore, Bill...
And Peter Lloyd paid a premium when he took away Pacific Western from BC to Alberta.
And Bill Bennett paid a premium when he bought Kaiser Resources from Edgar Kaiser.
Big premium.
Big premium. And now Edgar runs the Bank of British Columbia. In fact, for all we know, Edgar may be running British Columbia.
Why not?
Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jack. Morning, Mr. Chretien.
Good morning.
I'm a conservative by heart, but I just wanted to tell you that if you would have won the Liberal leadership, I would have voted for you in the last election.
Thank you. Enough of that. Go ahead, please.
Enough. Not good for my ego.
Yes, good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Morning. Bonjour, Monsieur Chretien.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Mr. Chretien, having been Minister of Finance,
yeah.
Would you please tell me why there has always been fear of having our own interest rate policies in Canada, as there seems to be more advantages than disadvantages in lowering them, especially in time of job creation?
Good question.
You know, that's a good question. The problem about interest rate is it's not set by what is happening in Canada. Because we have a free flow of capital between Canada and USA, the rates are set in New York. And if you have to be competitive with the Americans on interest rates, and in order to keep the money in Canada, we have to give a premium to keep it in Canada. And as we have huge savings in Canada, we have to maintain that in Canada. Otherwise, our savings will go to the United States.
Why couldn't we have an arbitrary amount of money set aside by the banks for housing loans, like they used to have in the States, veterans housing? Why can't we have a National Housing Act, make a bank put aside 2.5% for mortgages at 8%?
No, but you know, the problem is if you force the banks to do that, they will, if they lend their money in housing less than the cost of their money, they will have to charge it to somebody else.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chretien.
Good morning.
Here in British Columbia.
I'm happy to be here too.
Thank you.
We're having fun.
Good, I'm glad. as you were Justice Minister at one time, I'd like to get your opinion as to capital punishment.
Opinion on capital punishment.
Oh, I think that I voted twice on that.
You voted against it?
I voted against it, and I will still vote against it. I've been a lawyer and defense lawyer when I was a younger man, and I've seen some judicial error, and I don't think that capital punishment will reduce the rate of crime. You can compare that situation in many states of the United States, and you have the result.
Let's have a little bet. Get our prediction. When will the Liberals, if ever, return to power? How many years? Not the next election, you haven't a hope.
You never know, because now the elections are different. It's the movement is, we used to elect members who in turn elected a government. Now it looks that we're having a kind of presidential elections, and it's based on the performance of the leaders more than the kind of candidates we're having, or the candidates are less important, unfortunately. And things can turn around very, very fast. We have seen in the last 48 months, the Liberals at 22 and back to 50 and down to 23 and so on. So the fluctuation is fantastic. So if we hit at the right time with the right image, we'll get back there.
And Jean Chretien may well be there. My thanks to Jean Chretien. Free for all for the last 10 minutes or so after the break. Merci, monsieur.
Bienvenue, Judge.
Here is Naomi Cochrane, and here is her little speech.
Good morning, Jack. I'd like to present these daffodils to you in the symbol of new hope and new life in the fight against cancer. I was a former cancer patient myself, and I'm now a volunteer with the Canadian Cancer Society.
Because April is Cancer Month.
That's right.
And your name is Naomi Cochrane.
That's right.
And you have a brother, Glenn Cochrane.
That's right.
Who's just been drafted to the Canucks.
That's right again.
But tell me about, you got a transplant from your brother.
Yes, I did.
What kind of?
I had a bone marrow transplant done in 1981, and I'm very healthy now. And some of the funding that came for my transplant was from the Canadian Cancer Society through the April campaigns in the past that we do every April, starting this Monday, April 1st, and running till Tuesday, April 30th.
Oh, that's great. Well, only too happy to endorse it, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
My daffodils.
Your daffodils.
I get the daffodils. Doesn't the color just suit me in my fancy
beautiful.
city slicker suit? I don't know that I like the suit,
It looks
but I like
great.
the daffodils.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
And thank
Naomi.
you very much.
Slip off your wee microphone. Tell Glenn to do his best in the Canucks. They need all the help they can get, don't they? And I've just got time now for a few minutes to have a little free-for-all, because traditionally we normally have a bit of a riotous program on the last day of the season, but this year it didn't seem to be so appropriate to do a very special, funny program. So I shall be back live at the beginning of September. We're going to run the best of Webster during the month of April, and I can guarantee that the best ofs this April are very best of indeed. Syndication will continue at its normal time at the weekends. What do we call that syndication program? Webster on Sundays. Yeah, it's got a clever name. Rebroadcast during April. I am going to have a good relaxed summer, may play some golf here and there, may make a visit to my family in England, may make some work for myself at Salt Spring Island. And I've got some calls. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning, Jack.
Morning.
What do you think of the plight of the Canucks, and does Harry Neal still have to go?
My position has always been, not being one of these sports reporter crawling lackeys who infest the media, I have said for a long time now, God bless Harry Neal, he's a nice man, but he's got to go, must go. Absolutely no option. Harry must carry the can. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm just referring back to your show on Expo last week.
Yes.
And referring to the model that they had inside the pavilion.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, I've got a small boat, and I expect to buy a pass, and I'm just wondering, what kind of docking facilities are they going to have down there? It doesn't look like it's really too well organized, although they've got lots of little pretty boats there.
Well, on the ground it looks quite good. On the ground it looks like there's going to be lots of movement for the docking, but not the permanent moorage of boats. As you know, they bought out the marina down there and got rid of it.
Yeah, no, I just mean like day docking.
Oh, I think there'll be day docking. But you know what yachtsmen are like. They're notoriously selfish and greedy, and once they get a place, they try to stay there for the weekend, don't they?
Yeah, I know.
You're a greedy bunch, I'll tell you.
Well, I
But
just
there'll be
have a
lots
little-
of time for little bits of day docking. What do I know about day docking? Good morning.
Good morning, Jack. I wasn't aware that it was your last live show of the season. Let me just say this. Thanks to Uncle Bill and the boys, and I think you'll recognize by that statement who I am, ever since I've been unemployed, if it wouldn't be for your show, my morning would certainly be, quite boring. I usually tend to sleep in. Thank you for having controversial guests. A very interesting show, and I'm looking very much forward to seeing you back live in September.
Oh, good. And I'll tell you what, it's an ill wind that blows nobody any good, but I've had a hell of a lot of young men and women watching the Webster show for the first time because of the fact that they're unfortunately damnably unemployed. Best of luck to you, too. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack. Good morning. What's happened about this Fijian that ran a $250,000 bill up in VGH?
He's still here, still being treated.
That's really scandalous. And if I happen to owe them about $10, they'd be hounding me with a collector's bill or something like that. And we have to put up with this nonsense?
Well, as a civilized country, it's very difficult to take a guy off machines and send him back to a place where they have neither the facility with assured and certain knowledge that he will die. The mistake is always made at the other end of the scale in the other countries, I'm afraid. But I appreciate your emotion on the subject. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I want to wish you a very happy holiday. And I did hear you mention something about Salt Spring Island.
Yes, yes.
And I think that at your ripe old age, that maybe if you haven't already, try venturing into some scuba diving around that island.
No!
It's a fantastic place to do it.
Scuba diving? You think I'm out of my cotton-picking mind?
No, I took my father when he was about your age, and he'd never experienced it before, and I'm sure he was very grateful that we did.
Well, who knows? I may take up water skiing again this summer. I'm a very good water skier.
I think you would enjoy underwater better. Have a good holiday.
Thank you. What's going on here? Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
The last show of the season, I just wondered if it was possible if you showed us some of your support staff. People that help you out throughout the period
You
of the
want
year.
to see them? That's not support staff. Show Pamela. Show Pamela. Oh, show Judy, too.
Okay, Jack.
Just a minute. There's Mark. Annie, wave. That's Big Annie.
I just thought it would be enjoyable for some of us to see him.
Steve, get your hands out of the pockets. Get your hands out of your pockets, Steve. Look alive there. That's Reuben. He's the one that giggles interminably. That's Steve. And I will not tolerate Reuben's giggling next year. I don't mind the odd little snicker, but he giggles like a thunderclap.
He's the one that giggled the other morning?
Yeah, Reuben. Oh, he's a beauty. He's a gem.
Hey, Jack, and the best of holidays to you.
Yeah, you too, all of us. Who do we miss? Where's Big Pat? Pat, turn round, Pat. Oh, that's Joanne. She wears cowboy boots. Where's Big Pat? Where are you, Big? You're hiding. That's Stan. Oh, that's Stanley. Turn around. It's dark. You can't see Stanley. Hey, it looks like, what's that called? Oh, there's Ron, the soundman. There's Hans. What's the name of that? People players. Blacklight Magic. Famous people players. I think we've covered almost everybody. What about Mo? Where am I? 2. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I just wanted to find out where I can apply for a job where I get 5 months off like you.
You do 52 years hard at work, can be good at your job, and you'll finish up with 6 months off.
Oh, that'd be great.
52 years. 52 years, man and boy. I've been tied to the industrial slavery.
You used to walk 12 miles to school, back and forth, the whole bit?
No, I didn't walk to school. I just went in my bare feet.
Summer, Jack.
And I delivered milk in the mornings, in the cold, and papers in the afternoon.
Aren't you glad you live with us now, in the civilization?
It's certainly a lot easier here, I'll tell you. There's much less competition, of course.
Okay.
Much obliged. After the break. This is my last live show of the season. Throughout the month of April, we're doing a Best of Webster. Just running down the list quickly, there are some very good Best of Websters. There is, for instance, on April 8th, Helen Caldicott, the magnificent anti-nuclear Australian spokeswoman. Nathan Britigan, K.D. Lang, Petula Clark, some very good ones indeed. Try and watch them, you'll enjoy them. I'll be back in September. We'll be back to work before then, of course, but I'll be back in September to get ready for next season's Webster program with hopefully the exact same staff and the exact same crew. So have a good summer. I'll be back in due course at 9 a.m. precisely.
With a key, you unlock a door to imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sight. A dimension of sound. A dimension of mind. You're moving through a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas.
Hi, Dad. Remember last year when you were so mad that no one recognised you on the train from Hazelmere to Waterloo? Well, this year it's going to be different. I'll make sure they know who you are, and they may even talk this time. In the meantime, have a good summer.
Jack, I know you're gonna have a wing-ding daddy over a good summer. Maybe we can get together, write a few tunes. Never know, one might be a hit. Well, Jack, have a good summer. I'll see you later.
Just a moment, please. At one time during my highly undistinguished army service, I finished up in command of a unit of Sudanese.
Yes.
And after I'd been there about 3 weeks, I discovered they had a pet name for me. And boy, they read me like a book. The name they gave me was Abu Kalam Katia, the literal translation of which is father of much talking.